Charlie Munger says, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. And I believe in aligning employees' incentives with my incentives as much as possible. And my incentive as an owner is to pay myself as little as possible and maximize my enterprise value. That's the business I wanted to build. Some people maybe just want cash flow, whatever, that's fine. So what I look for with employees was I want to pay you as little as possible and give you as much equity as possible. And it's a bit of arbitrage because we bootstrap. I could give larger equity grants than VC-backed businesses. And it was a signal for me. If someone's like, no, I only want high cash, I want equity. I actually don't want that person on my team then because they don't believe in what they're building and they want their money today. Like I want someone who's going to ride, with me.
Let's then dive into, so you had some really good advisors that joined you on the board. You then were giving up some equity to have them on your advisory board, and then you're going to go attract some talent. So let's dive into those hiring strategies of how do you identify A-level talent, and were you paying them above market wages, below market wages, but with equity? So talk to me more about that.
Yeah, great question. So for hiring, I'm a sucker for best practices. I found this book called The Who Method on Hiring that I think is the best practice on hiring. They interviewed Fortune 500 CEOs and billionaires, and it just works. It talks all about how to source your talent, how to vet your talent. I literally just copied their method because it's that fantastic. I'd rather not reinvent the wheel. Sure, I modified it a bit, used some different assessment tools that I liked, put our own cultural spin on it over time. But before using that method versus using it, it increased my accuracy, triple probably, just absolutely essential. And what I started realizing is as a CEO, if my top priority is talent, I need to be spending the majority of my time on this. So I would start doing my own outreach, trying to find people to source, in addition to putting up job postings. But frankly, the best talent oftentimes is not looking for jobs. They're gainfully employed. So poaching became the source of, I would say, our best talent, actually. And oftentimes that comes from your network. Again, the Who book on hiring actually talks about this. So just follow the best practice. But yeah, when I thought about top talent, then Charlie Munger says, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. And I believe in aligning employees' incentives with my incentives as much as possible. And my incentive as an owner is to pay myself as little as possible and maximize my enterprise value. That's the business I wanted to build. Some people maybe just want cash flow, whatever, that's fine. So what I look for with employees was I want to pay you as little as possible and give you as much equity as possible. And it's a bit of arbitrage because we bootstrap. I could give larger equity grants than VC-backed businesses. And it was a signal for me. If someone's like, no, I only want high cash, I want equity. I actually don't want that person on my team then because they don't believe in what they're building and they want their money today. Like I want someone who's going to ride, with me. So that's the approach I took. Again, not right for every business. Depends what you're trying to build, but that's what I prefer to do.
Love it. Okay. So you're paying technically below market average probably, but incentivizing people with equity, and those are the people that you wanted. Let's talk more about the poaching aspect though. It is a big component of that Who book, which is like your best candidates are going to come from referrals from your network. So talk to me about like, how would you approach poaching other candidates? Was it primarily through LinkedIn? Because again, if you're getting contacts, like these are just like cold introductions, relatively warm of people. Talk to me more about like what that looked like and how you were doing that. Because you said it right. Like as the CEO, you quickly learned that like the number one thing I need to do with my time is hire the best people, right? So what were you doing like on a day-to-day basis? Walk us through what that actually looks like to poach good talent.
Yeah, this is it's an incredibly important topic that's very difficult. I will also mention to listeners, there's a book called High Growth Handbook that is fantastic. It's written by a Silicon Valley CEO entrepreneur. And there's a few excerpts on how to hire and and it's just fucking amazing. So I highly recommend buying that book and reading a few chapters on hiring in addition to Who. Yeah, it's interesting. Like so much of success, I think, in business does come down to the network. Like some of my best hires as we got underway, like an advisor knew someone, right? Or the banker, whatever, like built a peer in building a business. So that does become vitally important. So I think for listeners thinking about, could you spend a few hours a week actually improving your network and doing so in a non-transactional, loving way? I think it's important too. Like always looking to give first, but that's important. The poaching thing. Here's the thing. If again, like this came down to me logically proving to myself the highest use of my time is finding top talent. I'm going to bucket off X percentage of my time a week on this. I just try everything. Like sometimes you just brute force this shit. You try to work smart and hard, but sometimes you just got to like work hard until something works. And there's a bit of like a cold start problem where it's like my first couple hires were the hardest because I didn't have a good network. I had a 7-figure brand. I'm like selling hopes and dreams. It was easier a year later when we're at a 30 million run rate. I have great advisors. Like it's a flywheel, right? But in the beginning, and I'm guessing that's where many listeners are, it's really hard. And that's okay. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. So like I'll share some things I did. I really wanted an amazing growth marketer. So I would literally go on LinkedIn. And I had this hypothesis that someone with a consulting background from like a top consulting agency was just whip smart and figure out most problems. So I was literally on LinkedIn searching for ex-consultants with growth marketing in their title. This is not a joke. And literally like just cold messaging people.
Love it.
Get coffee, want to meet up. Ended up getting coffee with a guy here in Austin, and he was our 5th employee, and just incredible. Business wouldn't have succeeded without, but because he could just learn any area through it. That was amazing. I realized early on from some of these best practices, I needed an incredible executive assistant, jack of all trades, who worked HR, different functions. And I made the posts, I'm posting all the Indeed, all that shit. But then I'm like going to my network. And I think at this point I was in a mastermind called E-commerce Fuel. And I'm just like, guys, like anyone know a great EA? And this dude, Alan Merrick, great guys. I think my friend, Natalie, is like looking for a new job. And she ended up being 10 times better than any candidate in the funnel. And it just came from me being so like just telling everyone I knew, do you know this person? Do you know this person? Putting together a quick paragraph and blasting out to my network while trying all the job boards. While, by the way, later I would hire recruiters because sometimes recruiters are able to find these people. But for me, it's just being ruthless, like just trying everything to find this person, having such a high bar, not accepting anyone off the street.
Ben, as we wrap things up, I'd love to leave the audience with 3 actionable takeaways from every episode. Here are the 3 actionable takeaways that I noted. You let me know if I'm missing something. Action item number 1 piggybacks off of exactly what you just capped off with saying. It's all about your vision and the goals that you have. And again, reiterating the fact that like your business will only grow to the level of growth that you are experiencing as a leader. You are the constraint of the business. You are the one who's dictating, do you want this to be a $10 million cash flow business? Or do you want this to be a $100 million cash flowing business? Or do you want this to have $100 billion or a $1 billion or $100 billion valuation one day, right? All of those things are possible, but you do have to make the decision. And I do think that there are a lot of people, and even myself at times, like a lot of us shirk away from that. It's like, I don't know, let's just see. I want it to grow as big as it possibly can. And it's like, well, if you do want that, there are certain things that need to be done now. And you talked about that, right? Which is going and getting the advice of mentors that have been there, done that. If you want a $100 million brand, go talk to the people that have already done that. Then they'll show you the playbook. But then you can get your mind sold on that. Then you can go poach, and then you can go sell talent to come join your team. So number 1, create that vision for your life. And Ben, maybe we'll talk about this at the end, but you're talking about how to take traction, implement it into the business. Lots of people are running EOS, but I think that vision aspect, can you take that same traction playbook and implement it into your own personal life to say, this is the end goal. When I'm 80 years old, I want to be able to say this, and then backwards plan your life. Because when you're able to do that, you bring those decisions to today, and you'll start to make different decisions. What would your 80-year-old self want you to make? All right. Action item number 2 is we're going to be talking about creating the right strategy. Okay. So whatever your goal is, go find the right people that have been there, done that. I love your idea of going out and finding advisors. Okay. And there are so many out there. So, but you have to go find them, right? It's not easy. There's no job board that says, like, I'm an advisor, I would love to be on somebody's advisory board. You have to do a lot of networking to find these people. However, go find them. And when you find them, you're going to be able to kind of get the business model from them and say, like, all right, how do I bring on people? And then you're able to tap into their network as well. But it's first, you've got to have the right strategy. And part of that strategy is, first, are you in the right vehicle that could actually utilize that strategy? So it's a combination of both there. But I think having mentors that can say, hey, you want a $100 billion brand or a $100 million brand? It ain't going to be in this vehicle. Like, and having maybe that reality check is what you need. So that's action item number 2. Action item number 3 is being able to prioritize the one thing. Okay. So can you really focus on, like, what is my one big growth lever for this business? Right. And we talked about, like, that means probably not having multiple businesses. It means going all in, getting your big win, and focusing, what is the one thing that I can do that will have exponential results? And Alex Hormozy talks about this really well. He says business strategy is nothing more than having unlimited possibilities, okay, but with finite resources. And you've got to be able to make the call of, like, I could do anything today, but what is the one thing that if I do this will actually grow above all else, all the other things, tasks, activities that I could do in the business? This is what will reap the most rewards in the future. Ben, anything else that you feel like I missed here?
That's beautiful. And I think what I would maybe tell listeners is, it's one thing to know what to do, it's another thing to do it. And I would say knowledge that doesn't, infiltrate the physical world in some way is worthless. And I believe all this needs to be encapsulated in the right habits. We always fall to the level of our habits and our systems. So what I would tell listeners is just make sure you have the right habits in place, because in my opinion, it's the most important thing. And there's different ways to get that, atomic habits, etc. I'm actually percolating. I told you on this idea for a program that helps with this, but basically, if you are setting your priorities daily, weekly, monthly, you're every day carving out deep work to work on said priorities. You're learning every day, like we've talked about, and then you're setting aside 1 or 2 times a week to think. I believe success is inevitable. Like that. That's it. It's like that. It's actually that simple. But because of compounding, which is the 8th wonder of the world, we typically don't understand it as humans because it's geometric. Compounding applies not just to money, but it applies to what we're talking about here. But that's it. But most people, from my experience, don't have the discipline to every day set aside 2 hours when after work, to set aside, time every week to plan daily priorities, to learn every day. It's very simple. It's not easy, but it's incredibly simple. And if you just do those things, and again, this is the shift I made from chaos to success, was implementing these core habits. It just becomes inevitable because you'll figure it out. And every listener here is smart enough, but they need the right habits to allow it to compound.
Love it. Really well said. All right, Ben, final 3 questions. What's been the most influential book that you've read and why?
Yeah, there's a bunch that come to mind, but I was paging through The One Thing again, and I'll say that right now because it's so simple yet powerful. I think in an ever increasingly complex world, simplicity is incredible. And yeah, so I would tell listeners, if you haven't read it, read it. And if you have read it, read it again, but do it with notes. Do the hard thing and actually handwrite notes. And when you're done handwriting your notes, type it up. Every time I do this, it completely changes my life. So I'd highly recommend taking notes for The One Thing, because if you actually implement it, I think it's the highest leverage book I've experienced.
Yeah. Wonderful advice. That's a great book as well. All right. Question number 2. What's your favorite AI tool or chat GPT prompt that you've been using?
I right now so I'm still a little old school and believing in the power of my mind and do a lot of journaling and thinking time, but obviously AI is incredible. So there's a tool called Untold. It's a voice journal. And typically I'm like, whatever on voice journals, but you can speak 6 times faster than you can handwrite. and 3 times faster than you can type. This is N of 1, test on myself. But you can transmit a lot more information via the voice. In this app, now for me, acts like a therapist, in some ways like a coach. It asks you questions back based on what you're saying. So for me, it's been an incredible way to just dump what's on my mind, being totally honest about where I'm at. I think honesty is really important in life and business. And I get massive clarity from what comes out of like a 10-minute voice journaling session. So that one's been really helpful for me.
What app is that? Did you say?
Untold.
Untold.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love that. All right. Final question here. So who is somebody that you've come across in the e-com space that's impressed you lately? Maybe it's a contractor who's crushed it on PPC ads, logistics, redesigned a storefront. Anybody that stood out to you recently?
I'm not super in the weeds with the couple of businesses I'm involved with, so I will say no, but instead I'll share maybe a principle I found. I think conferences, et cetera, are fine. I have a firm belief that in the most important pieces of business in e-commerce, which I think is marketing, the best talent are the operators that I can trade notes with that maybe aren't going to be at Prosper or other shows. So one thing I found very helpful is if I'm able to connect with someone I think is a top talent, I will fly out and meet with them in person. They're typically in New York or LA. That's where I find the best growth marketing talent today. Sure, there's exceptions, but I have found massive value from taking the time to meet in person with these top talented people. They'll tell me all the tools they're using. They'll give me other people to meet with, but that is a complete game changer. So I prefer to do that.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Ben, this has been a great episode. Thanks so much for your time. If people want to follow you in your journey, they want to see what you're up to in your sabbatical and your new endeavors, where's the best people can follow you at?
Yeah, I would say you could go to LinkedIn, Ben Arneberg, or Instagram, Ben Arneberg. I might start creating more content at some point. So I can give me a follow request and I might start sharing. And if people have questions, happy to help as well. So just being
awesome. Ben, thanks again for your time today.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you for listening. Visit ecommbreakthrough.com for more information. If you've enjoyed today's episode, the best way you can show your appreciation is by clicking the subscribe button and quickly leaving a review. See you again next time.